Greetings, my fellow free blood stoppers. This is LL3's newest podcast. My name is Craig, transmitting from the beautiful Swampy Mango, South Florida. And today's date, Wednesday, November 8th, 2017. Yeah, I think the last episode I done didn't really come out too well, so I scrapped it and apologized for it. Yeah, I had like heavy congestion in my lungs like the past week. That's why I didn't do any shows. And clearing up is a lot better than before. A little bit in there left, but it'll be flushed out. Sometimes I just always have to laugh and chuckle when I hear all these experts out here on what happened in the horrific event that occurred in southern Texas. And folks still believe you need tougher gun laws, this and that. They all try to do the whole double side talk. But a person like myself has always been pro self-defense and protecting other innocent people as well. And that's what happened over there. And of course, they got the whole hoopla media. They got the bobbleheads in Washington, D.C. saying they want tougher gun laws. Oh, we support the Second Amendment. We're going to compromise. You know what? Stop living in your wet dream rhetoric. It failed. Someone saved the day. And all this about making new laws doesn't guarantee a damn thing. What really gets me the most, too, I see some folks out there, they want to post about the NRA being protected by everybody else. They don't blame the National Rifle Association. And I'll be very standing and clear. I may have my disagreements with some of the actions from this particular organization. However, if you're going to witch hunt, you're just like another bunch of cowards. All right? You're the same people that have that mindset that the ones who believe that the Muslims are responsible for 9/11. Okay? Witch hunting is for cowards. No ends, ifs, or buts. All right? And that's how I see things. Because we've been living in a dangerous world since the beginning of time. You can read in history books, Bibles, it doesn't matter. And you folks out there assume that government's going to save the day. You're living in a wet dream. I know I may be digressing here a little bit, but it's just my nature. I look at things a lot deeper and broader than some of these average Joe Blows who watch CNN or in some weak and pathetic synthetic movement. It's for the herd conformists, and I'm not one of them. But I'm going to be doing areas pertaining to these shootings. And add a couple of videos in here as well. So you could check us out. So it may not take too long. But, I got to get back to the swing of things here. So, well, everyone, thanks for your patience. And I apologize once again for not being active for over 8 days. So we're going to start off here. Mass shooting, mass psychology, and self-defense. This is by Brandon Smith, and this is from the Bob Livingston Alert. As it reads here, there is unfortunate correlation between crises and catastrophes and mass psychology. For those with a decent long-term memory, you might have noticed that the frequency of attacks and tragedies taking place today is far above and beyond what occurred 10 years ago. So much so that many in public have moved beyond the point of outrage and have now embraced complacency. The mass shooting issue, for example, once inspired fever debate over gun rights, not so much anymore. While I'm happy that the relentless attempts by leftists to exploit every shooting as a tool for their gun-grabbing agenda have taken a back seat, I see a trend in another direction which is equally dangerous. That trend is moving toward the acceptance that these things happen instead of a healthy discussion on solutions. A decade ago, the Vegas shooting would have inspired media and social discussion for at least a year. Now the story disappears in 2 weeks and is replaced with 10 others. I would be surprised if the latest church shooting in Texas, in which 26 people were killed, to stay on news feeds for more than a few days. Where does complacency come from? It's a complex problem, but one I think relates to the state of decline within any particular society. Carl Jung, the undiscovered self, Jung mentions a consistent element of latent sociopathy and psychopathy With any given culture, perhaps 10% of a society at any given time are latent sociopaths and psychopaths, and around 1% or less represent a full-blown sociopaths and psychopaths. Most of the latent people will never become truly dangerous if they are living within a culture that is healthy and morally balanced. In fact, with those inherited sociopathic traits can become very high-functioning human beings who are adept at careers that many other people avoid. Surgeons and soldiers are two examples. However, in the event that there is a cultural rot and degradation of principles, environmental influence come into play, and latent sociopaths and psychopaths have the potential to mutate into something far more dangerous. Jung examines this dynamic as an explanation for the sudden and accelerated decline of Germany in the 1920s and 30s into totalitarianism, like a little tongue tie there, totalitarianism, and moral relativism. When mentally disturbed, 1% turns into 10%. The entire nation can be dragged along into the abyss. I think it is valuable also to look at popular culture when trying to determine if a society is on the brink of collapse into a singularly of moral relativism. When examining Germany before it falls, I recommend studying the film of Fritz Lang, particularly his movie M, released in 1931, which depicts a serial killer with a penchant for children being put on trial by a group of underground criminals because they abhor what he does on moral grounds. But because his activities are drawing too much unwanted attention from authorities on their own criminal enterprises, and the dark world of M doesn't perfectly showcase the decline of Germany. I don't know what does. Today we are constantly surrounded by popular culture which leans towards the moral relative story in which the heroes must become monsters in order to defeat other supposedly worse monsters. And stories in which gluttony and decadence are applauded, while anyone that takes a more responsible path is portrayed as unhappy or joyless in the long run. Translate this to the developing trend of mass shootings around the world. On one end of the spectrum in the past, it was the sociopathic left that saw mass death as an opportunity to enforce political control over gun rights advocates, with the goal of eventually achieving total disarmament. If you're to hold up examples like Paris or Mumbai attacks to these people and to point out that the disarmament only makes mass shootings easier for criminals and terrorists, the leftists would not listen. Obviously, if any citizen, including the off-duty police officer, had been armed, the attack might have been stopped much sooner. In the case of the church shooting near San Antonio, the attack was interrupted by an armed neighbor of the church who used his rifle to fend off Devin Kelly, forcing him to escape in his vehicle. Had the neighbor not been armed, the massacre might have been gone much longer. Had one of the people within the church been armed, the attacks might have ended in seconds, as we saw in Denver 2007. Now, as I said earlier, there are sociopathic members of the political left that seek to take advantage of these scenarios, but these people have fallen by the wayside recently. On the political right, sadly, I've seen another brand of sociopathy rising, with some arguing that all people within the San Antonio church that were unarmed deserve to die. This is just as dangerous as mentality as the exploitations of the left. As the liberty movement itself set aside empathy and resorts to sensationalist or morally relative methods to drive forward a political agenda, then we only hasten the fall of our culture, not protecting it. And we become no better that the leftist disarmament thugs we abhor. In between those two extremes sits a colligated mass of people who simply don't care as long as a particular disaster doesn't involve them. These are folks who are uninterested in solutions and don't really want to hear anything about it. It is these people who tend to become wreckage floating on the tides of history. Their lack of concern eventually comes back to haunt them in the future. So, if these are the wrong ways to approach the mass shooting problem, then what are the right ways? I think it is vital that Americans in particular maintain our care and concern for the victims of these events. The solution to mass shootings is clearly a responsibly armed populace, but to convince more and more people of this requires a level of conscience and empathy that inspires confidence and perhaps brotherhood. When people know that you give a damn, it is more likely that they will listen to what you have to say. And as I noted in my article, How to Stop All Future Mass Shootings, the Vegas attack was organized by someone who was smart enough to avoid a point-blank engagement in a city and state in which concealed carry firearms are more common. Point-blank attacks are by far the most common because they are generally attempted by people who have minimal training, or because attackers are relatively certain that their victim will be disarmed in areas they have chosen. The Vegas attacker or attackers chose to use sniper-like tactics to prolong the massacre. However, what this shows is an armed citizenry is a factor or barrier in how an attack is planned. With properly trained or armed security overwatching major events along with an armed population, that may never be another mass shooting again. This is what Americans should be talking about. Yet, there is no practical discussion on solving the problem. Is this a symptom of impending collapse within our society? Possibly. There was ever an honorable task for the liberty movement today is to inspire solutions and to maintain moral balance. These shootings and other crisis events should not be forgotten within a week. They should, and at the very least, be a learning process, a means by which we evolve our way of life and become more self-sufficient and more safe. If you're not a concealed or open carry proponent, then you should be. If you understand the majority of shooting events that are stopped by average citizens that are armed, then it should only follow that you should become one of those armed citizens. In the meantime, it's not for us who are consistently armed to admonish disarmed victims as if they deserve what they got. Their failure is our failure as well. For if we are not working diligently to convince others of the importance of self-defense, then we have contributed to the conditions that led to these massacres taking place. There are methods of stemming the tide of social collapse. They are, in fact, solutions. They begin with each individual acting in small ways and big ways every day. Complacency and zealotry are the enemy, as well as those that would encourage such mentalities. It's interesting here because the truth of the matter is, my friend, we are in the first line of defense. And what's been happening is, I call it the sweet Polly purebred syndrome. If people around my age group before are familiar with Underdog, the cartoon Underdog, you can understand where I'm coming from. If there's a bank robber or someone gets their house broken into, they have put their hands up in submission, go, "Underdog, help me, help me." And of course, you got sweet Polly purebred going, "Oh well, where is my underdog gone? Oh well, where can he be?" So this is why you have to always, it only works in cartoons, not the real world. Because we've been living in a dangerous world since the beginning of time. And plus, if you start looking at sovereign immunity and tort liability laws within the 50 states, technically, the police aren't obligated to protect you as an individual. And I'm not here to condemn them either, but they have a job. They got multitask to protect and serve the public at the best of their ability. So that's why you have to always look at things a lot broader. When I hear people on Facebook talk about, about gun control and all that, like if they had certain gun laws, he wouldn't get the firearms. Come on, stop living in La La Land. Okay, it is totally inapplicable in my realm, and I'm not afraid to say that to you in person. To the ones that have that mindset, because I do find it ridiculous. All these people become experts now. What we can do, what not, and even people too on the the pro-gun community, like oh hoorah. You can't do that. You got to be the rabbis, the teachers. Use finesse. You just way to inspire people. You can't change them, but make them think a lot broader. That's why inspiration is very good, positive inspiration. And that's why I always try to make sure I try to do my shows. This day that I have compassion, my passion, and I get, I'm gonna like to fling someone through a window, which is human, part of humanity. But the truth of the matter is, we're all in the first line of defense, and it doesn't matter what your belief system is, we all have a lot in common. Protecting ourselves and our families and our loved ones around us. So that is the key. So I'm going to hit one here. This is everything I'm going to be talking about now will be like Second Amendment, all that. And this one here came from the Mice Institute. It came out a couple days ago by Ryan McMacken. It says here, when gunmen strike, you're on your own. Here is an often used tactical to defend government police organizations from criticism. When a critic points out abusive tactics of police officers, defenders counter, and yet you won't refuse police help next time there's a robber in your house. This, we are told, illustrates that all police critics are hypocrites. There has been a dishonest tactic, of course, since consumers of police services are forced to pay the local monopoly police force and have no other options. Government police forces have monopolized the marketplace, crowded out many private security services, thus calling the police to scare off some robbers on one's property is more hypocritical than a critic, a local power company who nevertheless turns on a light bulb. It is simply a matter of making do with the high price, low quality monopolist when no competition is allowed. Just how low these quality services has become more apparent in recent months. In the wake of yesterday's church shooting in Texas, for example, private citizens were the ones who shot back at the assailant and then chased him down in a high-speed pursuit. Police did nothing but write some reports afterwards. A few months later, as a violence escalated during Charlottesville riot in Virginia, law enforcement agencies stood back as it did except the crash of a helicopter in the woods. Worst of all, of course, is the fact that it took police an hour and 12 minutes to respond to the Las Vegas shooter who killed more than 50 people as he opened fire on a crowd near the Las Vegas Strip. Although hotel security had reported the location of the gunman who had shot a security guard, even before the shooting began, local police agencies waited for more than an hour. Entering the shooter's room, it remains unclear why the shooter stopped shooting after only about 10 minutes. But we do know that we have been free to keep shooting for much, much longer period of time. Among advocates for private firearms ownership, the joke is that when seconds matter, police are only minutes away. In Las Vegas, at least the saying could be, when seconds matter, the police are only an hour or more away. Defenders of the police, of course, will claim that an hour of preparation was necessary in order to protect our officers' safety. But this also tells you a lot about how government police function works. Like gunmen is raining down a gunfire upon a crowd of people, is officers' safety that comes first, not citizen safety. There are just some more recent examples. A multitude of historical examples remain as well, including the Columbine shooting, in which local police agencies did nothing but seal off the area while the shooters remained untouched inside the school. The students and faculty trapped inside the school were on their own. One might also point out to the Waco, Texas massacre, in which police agencies claiming to be rescuing women and children from the cultist David Koresh decided to burn most of them to death instead. None of this should surprise us. It is the established policy in the United States that police agencies have no duty to protect citizens and are not liable for any harm that comes to citizens due to police inaction. In other words, the taxpayers are required to pay for protection from police, but the police aren't required to actually provide services. It's our immunity tort liability. One only can imagine the howls we'd hear if any private industry were allowed to function in a similar way. So we shouldn't expect any reform or any other measure that will hold police accountable for doing so little to engage and stop violent criminals in time of extreme crisis. If anything, we should expect police agencies to call the taxpayer to pay even more for police services. This, of course, is what happened in the wake of September 11, 2001, one of the worst security failures in American history. A failure allowed by the most well-funded security and police agencies in the world did not lead to questions of whether Americans are actually getting their money's worth for the generous budgets that go year after year to federal law enforcement agencies. Instead, we are told the taxpayers should be prepared to shell out even more money and give up more of their freedoms. Can we say extortion, blackmail? Yeah, something to look at there, my friends. The same true of local police agencies. Police departments are ever hungry for more funding, for combat vehicles to use against the local population, and for more firepower. But when police are armed to equip to the teeth, arrests for petty drugs offenses remain a priority, while car thefts, rapes, assaults produces few arrests. As the police response to the riots in Ferguson, Missouri showed, the police are happy to protect government buildings and government property. Everyone else, it seems, is on his own. That's right, my friends. It's just giving you an example of sovereign immunity and tort liability. And this is why I always say, if they're not obligated to protect you, why give them the authority to harass you? When you start learning about your rights, you understand where I'm coming from. Everyone's rights here are natural born. That's why, my friends, the first line of defense is you as an individual, beautiful, loving individual that does care about your family, your friends, and loved ones. Because I have that same mindset. So hopefully you folks out there will agree and stop playing on this sweet pie purebred syndrome. Remember, my friends, it only works in cartoons, not in real life. All right, speaking of that, we got one here. It says here, Polk Sheriff Judd, armed citizens answer to the situation like Texas. Developed by Melissa Gomez from the Tampa Bay Times. Came out yesterday. Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd once again is stirring up controversy online. On Tuesday, 2 days after a mass shooting at a Texas church, Judd posted a video on the sheriff's Facebook page, offering his own take on what should happen the next time a similar situation occurs. Someone got to be there with a gun to stop them. And he said in the video, nodding his head to tell them, for he was referring where people like David Kelly, 26, the shooter who entered the First Baptist Church in Sutherland Springs, Texas, and killed 26 people with an AR-15 assault rifle. Additionally, Facebook post offers free shooter prevention training for business owners to help them prepare if they are ever in a similar situation. During the preparation for Hurricane Irma earlier this year, Judd tweets about not allowing sex offenders and predators into shelters received national attention. I mean, think about it. He shows up with an AR-15, a lot of ammunition. Sure, it's easy to kill people when there's no one there shooting back, he said. But all that changed when a neighbor with a gun shows up and starts shooting him. Judge goes endorse people who responsibly carry and use firearms to protect others. And of course, you got, folks, it says here this is from his Twitter page, and this is in Winter Haven, by the way. The only thing that stops a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. We do active shooting scenario training, and they get your phone number. And of course, here you got Amanda Kelly. Are you saying church congregations should be armed and guarded? That is awful. What kind of world do you want your grandchildren to live in? Well, honey, you haven't learned a damn thing, with all due respect. And I just sent you a video that was an interview with Charles Van Vick. What happened to him at the St. James Church, called the St. James Church Massacre in Cape Town, South Africa, July 25th, 1993. And I'm going to post that video on my speaker page too, folks. So There's another person living a wet dream. And one person still says, this is awesome. And someone's here, lawyer with Palmer. With all due respect, this is not working. Stats are against you. You know what? So like I said, Reverend, talk to Charles Van Vick again. I do believe the Second Amendment, Judge says in the video. The bottom line is as simple as this. We got to look out for each other in this society. We always have. We have to be safe. We live under the illusion of safety if we don't have the training and equipment to protect ourselves. And you got to respect them for that. Doesn't mean you're going to be lovey-dovey towards the guy. However, you got to give them homage for speaking out. Because we are in the first line of defense. And our basic rights are guaranteed under Article 1, Section 2 of the Florida Constitution. So all these folks here that are in la-la land is part of the ones that go, Lord, please give me a new world order, please state in Jesus' name, amen. See, when you're a reverend and you said stuff like this, you know what, to be very sincere, you just breached your faith. And that's how I seek, that's how I examine things. You're not a Christian, you're a hypocrite. Michael Moore syndrome, as far as I'm concerned. So, and he's correct, like him or not. I gotta give him the thumbs up. And the sheriff needs to do himself a favor. Get rid of these flags, the 3 flags behind you with these golden fringes. We're not under maritime law. So hopefully he'll get that message, okay? So, all right. Finally, this came from Mike Meharry. It came out, I think today or yesterday? Yeah, it came out yesterday by 10th Amendment Center. So they say the right to keep arms is not about hunting. The recent mass shooting in Las Vegas and Texas have reignited the gun control debate, with some gun control proponents once calling for federal assault weapon ban. What a wet dream. Supporters of such law often argue the founders never imagined powerful weapons available today in the hands of the people. But this argument completely misses the primary reason for the Second Amendment was included in the Bill of Rights in the first place. The assault weapon ban argument tends to go something like this. Does anyone think the founders of our nation foresaw weapons like we have today? I think they expect us to make common sense reforms. Can I give that person a P9 microphone? Actually, the founders weren't dumb. I'm pretty sure they realized more powerful weapons would come along. I have no doubt humans will develop even more effective ways of killing each other in the future. It seems likely people as smart as Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, and George Washington at least imagine the possibility that more effective and deadly firearms would evolve with time. But whether they did or didn't foresee advanced weaponry misses the crucial point. The purpose of the Second Amendment wasn't to ensure people couldn't always go hunting. It wasn't primarily meant to allow people to defend their homes and families. Fundamentally, the Second Amendment right was included in the Bill of Rights to ensure people will always have the means to match the firepower of a federal army. It was intended to ensure people that could resist tyrannical governments with the force in the last resort. The founding generation understood that, and an armed unpopulace would open the door for the government to trample its liberties. In simplest terms, the Second Amendment was meant to ensure the people could take on the government if necessary. In 1787, Noah Webster wrote an examination into the leading principles of the federal Constitution. In support of the ratification of the Constitution, he forcefully argued that armed people would serve as a check against a national standing army. As he says, quote, another source of power in government is a military force, but this, to be efficient, must be superior to any force that exists among the people, or which they can command, for otherwise this force would be annihilated on the first exercise of acts of depression. Before a standing army can rule, the people must be disarmed, as they are almost in every kingdom in Europe. This is the 18th century now, folks, okay? The supreme power in America cannot enforce unjust laws by the sword, because the whole body of the people are armed and constitute a force superior to any brand of regular troops that can be. on a pretense raised in the United States. A military force at the command of Congress can execute no laws, but as such as people perceive to be just and constitutional, for they will possess the power, and jealousy will instantly inspire the inclination to resist the execution of a law which appears to them unjust and oppressive. The American colonists, unquote. The American colonists have first-hand experience with government attempts to strip away their means of self-defense. In fact, British efforts to disarm the American colonists led to the first shots of the American Revolution. The Redcoats marched on Concord with explicit purpose of capturing or destroying guns and powder belonging to the colonial militia. During the Virginia ratifying convention, George Mason referred to British efforts to disarm the colonists as he argued for the need to protect the right to keep and bear arms. This is a quote. 40 years ago, when the resolution of enslavement in America was formed in Great Britain, the British Parliament was advised by an artful man, Sir William Keith, who was governor of Pennsylvania, to disarm people, that it was best and most effectual way to enslave them, but that they should not do it openly, but weaken them and let them sink gradually by disusing and neglecting the militia. Here, Mr. Mason quoted sundry passages to this effect. Why should we do not provide against the danger of having our militia, our real and natural strength, destroyed? The general government ought at the same time to have some such power, but we need not to give them power to abolish our militia, unquote. It says here now, the local militia was the check against government power. Some will concede this point, but argue this only militia, the National Guard, gets to have access to weapons. I hear that crap a lot of shows too, so you know what? I will continue on here. They say this does not extend the right to keep and bear arms to individuals. This reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of the makeup of the militia. It wasn't an exclusive body of military men. The militia was made up, as Mason said, of the whole people. The militia existed as a body distinct from the government. It could be called up by the government, but it maintained some level of independence, in fact. Mason expressed fear that without an explicit amendment protecting the right to keep and bear arms, the militia will be reduced to an extension of the federal government itself, not the body of the people equipped to resist government tyranny. And it's one of the quotes. Here goes. Mr. Chairman, a worthy member has asked who are the militia. If they be not the people of this country, and if we are not to be protected from the fate of the Germans, Prussians, and so forth, by our representation, I ask who are the militia. They consist now of the whole people, except a few public officers. But I cannot say who will be a militia on a future day. If that paper on the table, the Constitution, gets no alteration, the militia on the future day may consist of all classes, high and low, rich and poor. And another one here. Author of Letters from a Federal Farmer echoed Mason's argument. He says, a quote, whereas to preserve liberty is essential, the whole body of the people always possess arms, and be taught alike, especially when young, how to use them, nor does it follows from this. This all promiscuously must go into actual service on every occasion. And the mind that aims at a selected militia must be influenced by a truly anti-republican principle. I'm in the Republican Party either. And when we see many men disposed to practice upon it, whenever they can prevail, no wonder true Republicans are for carefully guarding against it, unquote. The discussion surrounding the right to keep and bear arms in the ratification debate makes it clear if the primary reason for an amendment specifically prohibiting the federal government from infringing on the right to keep and bear arms was to keep it from being able to control the state militias and effectively disarm the people. With this in mind, it logically follows that the founding generation intended for the people to have access to weapons, capable of matching military firepower, and they would in no way be shocked at the idea of the general population owning so-called assault weapons. That's a quote there. In fact, that was the point. They wanted the populace to both possess military equipment and to have the ability to use it. They wanted to ensure the people could resist the government by force if necessary. When you bring up this truth today, a lot of people laugh it off, claiming a bunch of rednecks with AR-15s could never face down the U.S. military. Well, tell that to the Afghani nomads and Vietnamese peasants. Exactly. One does not have to be an advocate of violent revolution to recognize the danger of allowing the government to have a monopoly on guns. It's a matter of balancing power with power. The government will be far less likely to become tyrannical or oppressive when the people maintain the ability to resist. When you remove the option of self-defense, it tips the scale of power toward the government. That opens the door to tyranny. Technology has certainly changed over the last 250 years. Human nature hasn't. Government is still prone to abuse the people when it get away with it. Power still corrupts. Absolute power still corrupts absolutely. Ooh, yeah. He's right. Human nature, my friend. That's why the Bill of Rights is so essential. To, of course, Second Amendment and the Ninth Amendment, enumerated rights. Who's going to argue with that? Not some Joe Blow from the synthetic movements or some corporate-funded entities. Not even the Southern Paul Law Center can't debate on this. That's right. This is why, my friends, you keep the government on their toes when it comes to the Second Amendment. It puts them in check. They hate it when people are armed and are capable of using it. You're the most powerful firearms. You got these pencil-neck cowards with Palmolive hands. They speak real good, big, but they have no backbone. This is why I am pro-freedom. I'm a Bill of Rights advocate, an activist. Not just the second, but all 10 amendments. That's what I'm about. If you don't like it, too bad, because I don't give a damn what you think. But that is all. I'd like to thank everyone for listening, plus feel free to download and share throughout your social media networks. If you have any questions, comments, or you may send something that's interesting you may want to check out, whatever you do, please address your correspondences with decorum. You can hit me on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Tumblr, YouTube, Dreams Network, Scene.lifeminds.com, FutureNet.club, Patreon.com/Look if you want to be a supporter, donor, and all that. That would be great. I got nothing in there, but you know what? That's how it goes. Or you can hit me on Gab, GAB.ai, which is the more freedom version of Twitter. That's according to the ones that established it. In addition, you can email me at LokiLuck3@gmail.com, or to you encrypted ones, LokiLuck03@protonmail.com. Woo, yeah. Okay, my friends, that's all for now. Once again, thank you for your time. Plus, always remember that demoniac resistance is healthy for the soul and can liberate humanity. Until next time, take care of yourselves. Keep on spreading love, and may your guardian spirits be with you.